very good evening, morning, and afternoon to all of you who have joined us today. I hope you guys can hear me loud and clear. I'm Rashika, and I'm glad to be hosting this with all of you today. We all know the importance our portfolios hold for us as designers, and how to build a one is something we're going to learn in today's workshop. We have Pascal with us. Pascal helps designers sharpen their skills and propel their career forward. He always aimed to strike the best possible balance between honoring users, achieving business objectives, and delivering immersive branded products and experiences. Pascal believes he has been lucky enough to work with world class customers in diverse environments, which allowed him to acquire a robust and a versatile skill set and solid work ethic. He has led, built, and mentored design teams in deadline driven environments and cross functional collaboration. Pascal, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for doing this workshop.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm
Cool.
gonna share my screen and then I
Yeah.
can check here. Thanks for having me and allowing me to talk about how to create a winning portfolio, the who, the what, and the how. This is a piece of a course that I've created, which is a bit bigger than what I'm gonna present, but I'll walk you through the foundations, the basic, what to expect, who to design for, how to design for them, and so on. So let's go. Just as you know, gatekeeper at the beginning, write down all your questions. You can put them in the chat, and I'm gonna help answer anything at the end. And we're gonna just go through it. I'm gonna, walk through my process, and we can answer any questions at the end. In my opinion, from what I've seen of looking at thousands of portfolios, interviewing a lot of people, we're falling into what I consider a formulaic approach to UX design case studies. Why? There's a lot of UX boot camps, there's a lot of things, and which is at the very core of it, fantastic. We're setting up designers to create a foundation, to create a portfolio, but with that, we're falling into what I call the cookie cutter aspect of it, where doing a portfolio, I know it takes a very long time building a case study, finding your images, using the right words, and so on. But doing a case study template approach, like everybody does, we're falling into, a cookie cutter, like I said, following the same checklist approach. And I think we got to get out of that mindset. Those things are important, but I think we got to get out. So what I'm going to present today is, who's this for? It's for UX designers, visual designers, graphic designers, product designers, interaction designers. What I'm going to present falls into the design category as a whole. You're going to be able to pick nuggets out of it, regardless of which craft or which part of the craft you decide to move forward with. So basically, at the end, if anyone looking for a design stellar portfolio is going to be able to grab pieces of what I'm presenting and put it to their own. Why view this course? Portfolio is your way in. It's going to allow you to get on the top of the pile without questions. When a role is at a company, there's thousands of people that apply. How do you stand up? How do you get above and beyond? So these are things that we're going to look into. Like the introduction, I'm Pascal. I'm a design principal. I've been lucky enough to work with some of these companies that you're seeing out there. I've either led, built, or worked with these companies, and I've worked with many other designers, I've mentored, etc. And I've been lucky enough to evaluate a lot of portfolios and figure out what works and what doesn't. And I've created what we're going to go through is what I consider some sort of a framework that can help you get above and beyond. And we're going to go through it. So portfolio basics. Most people face the same problems. Don't know where to start, don't know what hiring managers want to see, and don't know how to write about their work of themselves. Those are the three things that I'm noticing. A lot of people talk about and go in depth about the process, the design thinking, etc., but they forget to talk about I in a portfolio is extremely important. While you're at work, we talk in we. So we as a team were able to achieve this. In your portfolios, it's all about yourself. I was able to lead a team of 20 designers. I was able to take a problem and tackle it from end to end. And here are the outcomes that I helped lead. Those are the things that a lot of times, and it's a big difference for hiring managers, etc. Another problem is where to start, don't know which project to take, etc. So those are the things that most people face. And hopefully at the end, you're going to be able to see why. Like we said, portfolio is the storytelling of your career journey. It's everything that you've done. It's your achievements. And it's how you portray yourself to potential managers and potential hires. Do you really need one? Yes, but there's always a but. Depending on your role, depending on where you are in your career, your portfolio, you're not going to be presenting it in the same way or same aspect of it. And we're going to be able to talk about those things. When should I make a portfolio? I think this is important. I think too many people wait until they are asked to make a portfolio. My biggest recommendation is every time you finish a project, while you're doing a project, gather all the artifacts, grab screenshots, write down what you're doing, so that at the end of the year, you should always adjust your portfolio, recuperate from everything that you've done, so that like you don't have to scramble at the end. Let's say you lose your job, you got approached by somebody and you're struggling to gather all the insights. You're not scrambling for it. Don't wait at the end. It's really going to help you. And I recommend updating your portfolio every year. You're reflecting on what you've done, your achievements, and so on. What to avoid? This is probably one of the biggest things that I'm seeing. And we're kind of going for this one size fits all approach. That's why there's a big yes. And that's why when I look at portfolios, everybody starts to look the same. Everybody's the same framework, the same approach. And the formula approach that we're doing, everybody, like, it's hard to stand out. I could literally pick 20 portfolios. The majority are going to look the same, which is okay because we're hitting all the foundations. Within that foundation, we need to find a way to stand out, to be unique, and to really create your own style and your own perspective to all these things. Like I said, everything looks the same. And you can see, like if you look at, UX courses, UX foundations, there's obviously a checklist that you need to do, which is okay. I think we just need to figure out how to stand out. You are unique, and that's what we need to look for. We're going to look at, what usually is the foundation of everything that we see, very long text. Everybody talks about the process, not the design. They're going to talk about, I've done usability testing, I've done, journey maps, I've done design thinking frameworks. I think that's a given. Anybody in the field should understand that those are things that you have to do. I don't think you need to talk about the 12-step program in each and every of your case studies, unless you're really focused on user research, etc. Obviously, hit all the marks, but I would recommend you hit like the top level elements that you've done. If people want to read more, add that in, add that PDF that talks about the entire process, the entire framework that you've done from the design thinking process. Don't add that entire process in your case studies. That's really important because we're going to see the majority of the hiring managers, the majority of HR people spend 3 seconds max before they move you on to the next process. And only at like when you get to 2 steps, 3 steps down, they actually read the entire process. So sticking to those things is really important. When we have this, we are missing lack of context, underwhelming solutions, superfluous language. The mock-ups aren't necessarily interesting because we're focusing too much on the text aspect of it. And a portfolio is your storytelling capabilities on your journey. Fitting in is not going to work. It's not about doing that check mark and fitting in. It's about standing out. That's the goal. Because every job application you do, there's 100 other people that are doing for that same role. How do you stand out? That's important. That's why your unique voice, your unique perspective is what we want to look for. Like I keep saying to, since the beginning, trying to be everything for everyone is not going to work. So using that checklist approach is fantastic to ensure you got the foundations. Now you got to take that and go above and beyond. The same as if you go into a bookstore or at Chapters or any bookstore we may have in each of our respected areas. How does a book stand out? People are going to either look for a specific book title or they're going to browse, the book cover. All books are the same. They have a book, they have a title, everything. It's your goal to stand out. And it's the same thing in your portfolio. Everything has the same, it has pages, it has a cover. You have to stand out. So everyone is unique, and that's what we need to focus on. How do you get into your audience's head? If we put ourselves into your hiring manager's shoes, if we look at your, like when you work on a project, you got end users. Your portfolio has end users. And unfortunately, we don't learn that in UX Bootcamp or in things, because this comes from working in the industry, talking to hiring managers, talking to HR people. You need to understand what they are looking for. And by putting ourselves in their heads, it allows us to tweak our portfolio to make sure that we're responding to their expectations. Just like anything you do, you need to use your test your portfolio. Ask an HR person, ask somebody else in the field to have a look at your portfolio. So use your test your portfolios. On average, and these are real stats, stats from the industry, stats from hiring managers, stats from HR people. On average, they look for at least 4, or they look at 40 portfolios per positions. They look at maximum of 1 case study per portfolio. The more experience you have, the more you're easily able to understand the process somebody has just by looking at 1 or 2 portfolios. You don't need to look at everything else, because you understand from the first 2 how they're going to think. They spend on average 30 seconds per case study. If you have not captured them within the first 30 seconds, they're not going to keep reading. So that's why I say text is important, but it's not everything. Just like a book, the image you use at the top, the hook that you're going to create, those are things that are going to want to make them keep reading more. So these stats are really important to understand and realize that you need to design against this. This is quotes from real people. First, I just do a quick scan. If the work looks interesting, then I proceed. So this person basically looks at a portfolio, reads in diagonally, looks at the image, the words that are being used, the hooks, the titles. If that captures his interest, he's going to keep reading, he's going to read more. Another important, design lead that does a lot of hiring managers, I didn't put the name because I don't want to, I want to keep this personal, but they basically, it's more of a scan. Me personally, it's a combination of both elements. When I look at portfolio, I look at images because I want to be captured. I want to look at the storytelling capabilities of the individual and the words that they use, etc., and the process. And at the end, I look at outcomes. I'm going to talk to it about later, but the outcomes, it's fine that you go through your entire process. What are the outcomes? How did you improve the user experience? How do you improve the craft, etc.? Again, that's important. Those are things that I personally look for, and that I've noticed that really creates a difference from designers that can design and designers that can design with the business aspect of it. And I'll talk to it a bit later. Hiring managers with more experience, like I said, it takes a matter of seconds to know if this person is going to be able to move to the next round. Only, like I said, in the second or third round, do we really dive deep into the process. And that's when you kind of have that interview with a lot of people. But you need to go through the first gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper is what makes you go through the next round. That's the person you need to design for at the beginning. How can designers stand out? What are the necessary tips and tricks to go ahead? Those are things we're going to look into here. Recruiter is your user, like I said, design for them. They have a 3-second span, design for it. Use big images. Images are key. Texts are key. Those are things that are going to help you differentiate yourself. What can we look for in falsehoods of a portfolio? Do I need to show a lot of work? If I don't hear back from them, have I failed? Do I need a custom website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? In a typical case study, I would say 2 to 6 or 3 to 6, depending on length, scope, and variety. That's it. Only use your best elements. If you only have 2, but those are your best, I'd rather you have 2 than have 5, that 2 strong ones and 3 that are weak, because you're always going to be judged on your weakest one. Unfortunately, that's how it works. That's how human brain perceives things. If you have a weak element in there, they're going to perceive you on that. I'd rather you have 2 to 3 very strong case studies And the ones that you think are not as strong, put them in like ideation, create an extra tab on your website. And those are just explorations, things so that people understand that you like to explore things, you've explored things further. It's not a full case study. That's okay to be in there. Show flexibility, but at the same time, make sure that you're pointing in the craft you want. If you're a visual designer, show visual design case studies. Don't try to be a UX researcher in your portfolio if you are not. Only put elements that you want to apply to work. So if you're applying to a lot of visual design roles, cater your portfolio to visual design element. If you're a UX researcher, cater your portfolio to UX researcher capabilities. It's important. Don't try to be anything and everything. Really focus on what you want and who you want to hire to. Quality, 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 everything. This is super important. Oftentimes, when people start, especially when you're early in your career, you want to show the variety of your knowledge. You want to show that's okay. Pick two really strong case studies, do those really well. The extra things that you've done, fantastic. Just put them in like ideation, explorations, etc. Just create a tab for it, but explain that these are not full case studies. It's important. It's really going to help you own in on your craft. Like I said, you're only not strong as your weakest case studies. And unfortunately, this happens too often. People, unfortunately, are good. Like the first case study is good and the rest fall or lack. You're going to be judged on that. It just shows, unfortunately, that, you know, maybe you're trying to cram everything at the same thing. So really work on this aspect of it. If you don't hear back from somebody, am I a failure? I say no. There's so many people that have applied to roles. It's even like myself and anybody else in the industry. I can apply to 40 jobs. I'm maybe only have like 2 people reach out. That's normal. Keep doing it, but test your portfolio. Another thing that I highly recommend within this aspect of it is you could create 2 different types of portfolios depending on the industry that you're applying for. If you're applying at enterprise software, they're looking for a typical way of doing things. If you're applying to agency, you can adjust a portfolio for people that when you apply to agency. I personally have 2, 3 different portfolios that I use. You know, I could have a website or a PDF if I need to explain things more in depth. We'll go through that, but those are things you need to look for. Case studies are an essential piece of the industry. They basically highlight how you work, how you think, and that's what people are looking for. You can be a fantastic visual designer, but if you're not able to articulate the why behind why you chose pink, why did you choose blue, why did you choose this typography, etc., that's going to show. And that's why a case study is there. People, hiring managers trying to see how you think, how to get in your head. So always put that as a perspective. Your portfolio, your end users are hiring managers and, design leads on the other hand. Design for them. They don't know you. How can they know you through your craft? That's why a portfolio is really, really, really important. Website aren't necessary depending when you apply. I think that's another thing that people need to realize. There's a lot of companies that are going to ask for PDF because you can be more in depth. A website, it could just be images, it could just show your craft, etc. And another thing that I want to talk about on that is you can adjust your language depending on the tone of voice, depending on the craft, or depending on the industry where you apply. That's something else that can help you. If you're applying to enterprise software, you talk in a specific way. If you apply agency, that's another thing. So depending on where you're going to want to apply, I think it's important that you adjust your portfolio potentially, and even the way you adjust your language. If we go into, the portfolio framework, which this is important, it'll explain a bit more. So I basically put the portfolio framework in 3 different things. There's a presentation, there's a storytelling aspect of things, and there's your personality. Yes, in school, UX bootcamp, we all learn about the check marks, the hero images, etc. I've simplified it in a way about presentation, storytelling, personality, and I'll explain why. Presentation, it's all about the format. That's how you present your work. So you care about portfolio, etc. A portfolio is also a product that you design. So it should be designed for it. Spend time on it. It's going to predict how you'll perform at a specific agency. It's going to show your craft. You can create a portfolio as a website. That's fantastic, depending on where you are in your career. A website is a fantastic idea. I highly recommend everybody have a website. You can have a PDF. If you're applying to specific jobs, it's going to highlight. If you want to go into more details, a PDF is great for that because you're able to put more words into it. You can talk about the process. You can talk about your framework, etc. So having these two things are really, 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 really important. Using platforms such as Dribbble, Behance, etc., I don't recommend for a portfolio. It's great to show your craft. If you've explored a logo, you can talk about presenting your work. Those are fantastic platforms to show your craft aspect of it. For a portfolio, I don't recommend. It's just what your own website or PDF are highly recommended for portfolios. Behance, Dribbble, and anything else are, you've got a logo, you've walked through the process, you put like the Pantone colors that you've used, fantastic. Not for a portfolio that you share for in the industry. A lot, Notion is really popular right now. I'm seeing people do Notion portfolios. I also don't recommend it because people can get easily lost in the process of Notion within tabs. It's tedious. There's a lot of text. I don't recommend it. It's not user-friendly for a portfolio. Align the story to the meaning. Depending on where you want to apply, pick and choose the portfolio suited for that company. Think of Dribbble. I've seen a lot of people. You can have Dribbble on your website. You can have Dribbble all the time. Dribbble is fantastic. It's aspirations, logos, etc. Not for portfolio. It's not a good fit for hiring managers. Like I said earlier, they have a short attention span. They can evaluate your visual design skills, but not how you think. That's like how Dribbble works. In your presentation, set up the context. Is it a school project? What were the limitations of your project? Were you able to, work on a team? Was there a big budget? That has to be explained. At the beginning, people want to see what were the limitations so that as they keep reading, they understand all that thing. Don't wait at the end to present that aspect of it. Even if you didn't succeed on what was the original ask, that's okay. We want to see wins, failures, etc. More importantly, we want to see how you think. How were you able to take a problem and articulate it to a potential solutions and outcome? So like I said, was it a school project? What were the business KPIs or OKRs that you were trying to achieve? What was the brief, etc.? That's basically setting up the portfolio. This is what is going to make people want to keep reading. So that's your hook. You got your big images. Think of like Netflix, right? You browse images and then there's like a short description. Those are things that make us want to dive in and potentially watch that episode. Your portfolio is the same thing. Think in that way, like an image, a hook, keep reading. So that's the beginning of everything. Details matter. Choose your image wisely, your mock-ups, etc. If you have an artifact that was in your portfolio, redo it so that it looks appealing, so that it draws people in. It's all about the craft of storytelling. That's why details are important. Obsess over your studied visuals. This is basically what's going to make people draw in. It's, we see things through our eyes, then we read, then we keep going. That's why I say redo your visuals, make them look appealing, be inspired by what other, by other websites in the industry, but really obsess over your case studies. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's a quote from a VP of design in the industry. It's basically, if the more little details that go wrong, that they add up at the end, and people won't want to keep going. So like I said, originally 2-3 seconds, that's the amount you want. So if they see a problem at the beginning, that's a death by 1,000 paper cuts and they don't want to keep going. Now, if we fall into this art of storytelling, like every story, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Just like any book, Your case study has the same thing. The beginning, we looked into. That's your hook. That's how the image, the text, the short description that makes people want to dive in. In a book, we have the same thing. People look at the back. Is the book interesting? They don't want to keep going. One of the best, you probably all know, Steve Jobs was fantastic at storytelling. He could literally sell anything to anybody because he had that form down, the storytelling capabilities, taking somebody along for the ride, a journey. That's your goal in a portfolio. You want to sell something and you're selling yourself. Think of that. Don't check off the boxes from that UX portfolio framework that we all learned. It's storytelling. It's an emotion connection to your portfolio. Focus on insights rather than process. Unfortunately, too many people focus on the process, and it dilutes the market. It creates a boring journey from your portfolio. Take your process, transform that into insight, transform that into storytelling. It's really going to differentiate yourself in the industry. Highlight what you learn. Make your insights interesting. Talk about things that didn't go well. That's okay. You could say, we started off with this, we didn't have the budget, we weren't able to achieve what we wanted. At the end, if I was to start over, here's what I would do. Here's why I would do it, because I think I would achieve things. That shows that you were able to you hit a road bump, and that you're able to think for yourself and potentially solve the problem if it were to happen again. Really, really, really important. Design your case study reading experience. Like I said, it's about the storytelling aspect. All books are books. Why do some books we're drawn in? The images, the way the typography is done, the storytelling aspect, the way our eye is guided through the story. You need to design your case study in the same way. It's a reading experience. You got to put yourself in the hiring managers, people that are going to look at your portfolio, etc. Is it easy to digest? Am I using hierarchy in terms of typography? Am I using, images to guide the user's eye? Those are things that need to happen, and you want to keep scrolling through, because I'm learning as I keep scrolling, I keep learning more, and I want to see the end of it. That's your design experience. The page it has to be dynamic, visual rhythm, harmony, art direction. Those are things you need to look for. As an example, keep your layouts interesting. Change it up, mix it up. It's okay to have two different case studies with different layouts. It just shows that it's not the same thinking process. It's not the same story you're telling because it's a different product or a different project. Mix it up, keep it interesting, keep the user engaged. It's about telling a story, how you think, how you work, and it's putting people inside your brain and your head. Build your portfolio in a personality on where you want to work. Do you want to work in an agency? Your portfolio should be catered to that aspect of it. If you want to work at a startup, cater it to that aspect. It just shows your personality for a specific type. So I think that's another aspect of things. If we recap, here's an example of a great beginning. It has a title, it has a hook, and it has an impactful image. I want to know more. This is your masterclass. Why is it my masterclass? Like just this alone draws me in. I want to keep scrolling. I want to learn. If you look at this, the middle, the journey, the failure, and the successes. This is just pure text, but the way that it, learnings and big titles, and I can see on the left the story. So if I want to skip to something, I can skip, but I'm seeing the middle. And this is very interesting because it's a bit more text heavy. You could, depending on if you're a stronger visual designer, you can incorporate images, but that's the middle. If we go to the end, there's typo on the left, but that would be the end. Big, bold outcomes. That I want to see. That's your differentiator, and unfortunately, not enough designers do that. I guarantee this is going to be a deal breaker for many. Too many talk about everything and get to the end. I'm like, okay, what are the outcomes? What were the impacts of your work? I don't see that. Even if it's just, I improved 1% user experience, I want to see that. I was able to reduce costs. It doesn't matter. Try to come up with them. If you don't have them, explain that you don't have outcomes. But this is gold. I guarantee this is going to be a different for many, many, many industries. Personality. Please, please, please try to be different. Too many, I could literally replace the name on too many portfolios. They all look the same. They all use the same approach. This is where you shine. Like I showed you in the previous explorations from portfolios, that had personality, that had their own uniqueness to it. It's about storytelling of how you think and how you design. That's your personality. It's not about the project itself. Yes, it's about the project in a way, but I want to see how you tackle that. That's your personality. Why is it so difficult? Because we oftentimes at work, like I said at the beginning, we talk in we. Now it's your time to talk in I. This is all about yourself, only about yourself. Brag as much as you can. Unfortunately, it's often hard for us designers to do that. But this is your time. This is your personality, your I moment. This is what you personally did inside that project. It's not a team effort. It is, but it's I. You need to talk in I. What are you trying to describe in this project to your audience? They're not there. If you were to take somebody that is not in design, how can you make them understand your approach? Explain it to me like I'm 5. That's literally how you need to tackle this. Don't overcomplicate it. Have fun. Explain it to me like I'm 5. That's where your personality is. Use a different font. Use different images. Helvetica works fine. If you're don't overcomplicate fonts. If you're not sure, stick with Helvetica. That's okay. But bring hierarchy, bold and light. Mix it up. How you can differentiate yourself from personality: voice, tone, image style, layouts, alignment, grid, motion, color. These are examples. These are the principles in design. And even though everybody knows them, not everybody uses them to their advantage. If I was to pick like Helvetica on the same image to 20 people, you could literally have 20 different styles. You're using the same thing. Be unique. It's about you. You need to stand out. That's your portfolio, and that's how you're really going to help shine. So what you should include: language that expresses you, readability, use the text, imagery that's clearly not Getty Images with the watermark like I had, definitive use of I and me, a story from your perspective per project. What did you learn, beginning, middle, and end? That's really going to help you set the bar. It's your capabilities of storytelling. It's an extension of yourself. Make it look and sound like who you are. What I like sometimes is when I've read a portfolio and I chat with the person afterwards, and then I make the connection. Oh yeah, I can understand that person speak. I can almost visually see them speak when I'm reading that portfolio. That's a connection you're trying to make within your portfolio. Just examples of really, really, good portfolios that stand out. As you can see here, images, typography, a different type style, bold at the top. This is an example. If I show another example, this is really pushing it. I don't really recommend you go this route unless you're really owning on your craft. But I want to show a variety of personalities in this. And then, another one, which is big typography, a big imagery that really drives you in. These are examples of how you can differentiate yourself. And now people are going to be drawn in to your elements. So if I cap up with extra tips and must-haves, recreate your deliverables. Highly, highly, highly important. Even if you don't have the image of it at the end, grab a mock-up, redo it. This is important. It's your storytelling capabilities, and it is what's going to draw people in your portfolio. Keep your portfolio scannable. Focus on your contributions. Because your portfolio is you and you're only you. Expected, but unique. Yes, I want to see title. I want to see, the descriptions. I want to see your battle scars. I want to see your outcomes. Try to keep it unique. As you can see on this screen, all these are portfolios. However, they are all unique. Everybody brought their own flavor to the table. Everybody in here, is a strong portfolio. All unique, non-negotiable. And I highly recommend you screenshot this or write it down. But these are things you need to have in your portfolio. Metadata: where, when, who, role, skills. That is a no-brainer. That's at the beginning. That's what, you know, your back, your book cover, etc. That has to be there. Your storytelling capabilities, the beginning, the middle, and the end has to be there. That's your storytelling capabilities. At the end, and this is where you're going to help stand out from the crowd. Your outputs and outcomes. Outputs are your artifacts you produce. Outcomes, what were your impacts as a designer within that company? Start thinking of it. Designers that can think in terms of business impacts and outcomes are going to outshine a lot of other designers in the industry. User test your portfolio. Like I said earlier, this is important. You create a portfolio, send it out to an HR rep. That's okay. Get feedback. Ask another designer. But user testing, just like we do any UX thing we do in life, a portfolio is the same, and it's a product. There's an end result. User test it. Those are the things that I wanted to cover at a high level. You know, I could have obviously went way deeper, but those are the basic foundations of what I consider to be a winning portfolio. I've looked at a lot of portfolios. I've helped a lot of people craft their portfolios. These are what I think the foundations are. And yeah, I haven't looked at the chat or anything, but time to, if you have any questions, I'm ready to help answer anything that's in there.
I think, thank you so much, Pascal. And that was a really, really great presentation. And I think I personally gained a lot of insights, and I could relate to you when you talked about, you know, personally scrolling through thousands of portfolio and in the first sight noticing if that's gonna work out or not. So I think that was amazing. We do have a few questions in the Q&A section. Yeah. So first question is from Ahmed. What can you do if you don't have that many solid projects, but you're struggling to find ways to improve?
That's a great question. It's one that we see. It's okay. Let's say you're starting out in the industry, you haven't worked with that many companies yet. It's okay to create a fake project. You could literally pick a project, and if I were to redo this, here's what I have. Give yourself a time frame. Let's say I want to redesign Netflix. I gave myself a week. I gave myself X amount of hours. This is why I want it. This is my why. This is what I want to achieve. You can use your test, etc. At least you're working on something, and you're gonna have an insight into a portfolio. A lot of people out of school won't have that many projects, or haven't had the chance to work in the industry for this long. So this is okay. It's okay to have what we call a fake project, but approach it in the same way you would as if it were a real company, so that the same process is there, the same elements are there. You've done user research, you've talked to different people, and this is what I would do and why you would do it this way, because we still want to see you think. We still want to see you, have outcomes, or outcomes are not going to be there, but outcomes could have been, yes, I've changed this approach, and from my user testing, I've reduced the amount of clicks to get to my favorite movies. I've reduced the amount of clicks to get where I want to be. Approach it in the same way, but don't tackle it any different, even if it's a fake project. That's what I would recommend. And like I said, even if you only have two, that's okay. You don't need more than any other project. Build 2 strong case studies, and the rest, put it in a different tab, or have a link to your Dribble or Behance, and that's where the other stuff lives, or have like a vision board or whatever. But 2 is enough. You don't need more than that for people to see how you think.
Quality.
100%.
In a PDF portfolio, how many projects should I show, and what presentation should I use?
When you're presenting out a portfolio, I imagine, I would say 2 is minimum. 6, again, it's going to depend. If you're, let's say hypothetically, you're a creative director in an agency, you can have 12, because an agency, you're In an agency, you're kind of reinventing the wheel every week almost. There's something that happens so often. So obviously at an agency, you're going to have potentially more projects. If you're an enterprise, you're working on a project for potentially a year. It's that same feature. So your portfolios are going to be different. If you're at a startup, you're going to be wearing numerous hats. One week you're marketing, then the next week you're designing a banner, the next week you're designing that feature for that product. Your portfolio is going to veer. So that's why I say also put the things in your portfolio of where you want to work. It's really important because it's going to shine. It's going to help people understand your process, etc. So 2 to 3 is okay. At maximum 6, unless you've been in the field for very long, you don't need more than 6. And if you're, art director or motion designer, build 2 or 3 case studies, and the rest just put explorations, or you don't need to put the entire process in there.
Makes sense. Okay, next one is from Ahmed again. What can you do if you have, if you have not worked on successful projects so far, like a few startups that didn't take off?
That's okay, because we want to see a startup is a fantastic because you're wearing numerous hats, you're trying different things, you've done user testing. Even if it didn't work, you still worked on a bunch of things. It's just your outputs and outcomes. It didn't ship. You weren't able to achieve things. Write that down, and you can say that if I were to do this again, I would bring more user testing. I would bring more elements to the table and things like that. But even if it didn't, your process at the beginning should be the same. It shouldn't change. Even if it didn't, you worked at a startup that failed, you still probably shipped the feature. You've still probably worked on something. It's just the outcome at the end weren't successful. Highlight it. I have some failures in my portfolio. It's okay because I would not expect everybody to win the game every time. If you do, it's because you didn't aim high enough, right? I think people, if you look at anybody that hires us, should not expect us to achieve 100% of everything they give us. They're literally, when they hire us, they're aiming for 70 to 80%. So think in that. So anybody that hires you, they're thinking you're going to produce and perform at 70 to 80% max. If you perform at 110%, they didn't put you in the right role. They put you too low. So it's
for someone who is a game developer, can I add like mini games to my portfolio?
Can you repeat that? Can you add what?
So for someone who is a game developer, can I add like mini games to my portfolio?
Yes, of course. A game developer, I think, is people want to see like your process, your games, and having that the actual game in there, fantastic, because people can see, how you code, how you can develop things, and people can actually explore the actual work. And it's the same hypothetically if you've worked on an app, put the link in there, put the prototype in there. Those are things that are fantastic and great. So I highly recommend you do that. Yes.
What if I've worked on many projects and all are more confidential and I'm not supposed to expose, then how should I build my portfolio?
That's always a really tough one. Like it's the same for, when I work in, in the crypto space, everything's confidential. You can't share anything. It's super secretive. What I recommend in those things and what I've done in the past, reach out to the person that you've worked on and ask them, what can you share of that project?
Right.
Probably you're allowed to share 2 screens that aren't confidential, but also include, and sometimes they're going to say yes, but put a password to the project. Have that person sign an NDA that they can't share. That's one way to approach it. So you can have 4 projects that are open, one that's closed or that has a lock on it, only through a password, which that, forces them to sign an NDA. And if that's the case, fine, then you can go. If the company you've worked for is fully NDA, don't want you to share anything, then you can, then it's hard. You can explain the process. You can put like an image, but it's a bit blur. That's okay. But at least explain the process, the procedures, and the outcome. Just don't name the company or any specific things that could potentially tie you legally against it.
Right.
Those are ways that I recommend approaching it. I have pieces like that in my portfolio as well. I still talk about it. Some of the images are blurred because I can't show anything, but it still shows how you think, how you process, etc. So don't get, blocked by it. Don't avoid doing a portfolio for it. I still highly recommend you go and do something for it.
Especially, I think when you work with agencies and agencies work with different clients of different industries, they might have different there's certain set of rules, confidentiality rules that we have to follow.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, what are the things I should do before starting my portfolio?
That's great. Think what I would do. Well, there's a couple of ways to approach it. Pick the projects you want to put in your portfolio. Look at the one that you can have an end-to-end experience, even if it's just you've designed a banner. That's okay. That's not what I mean, but that you can write against the entire process. That you need to understand. Do I have all the artifacts? If not, do I need to go and create the artifacts? Write those things down. Then be inspired. Go get inspired by portfolios online. Go get inspired by how others have achieved it. And you can, explore how you can write it, but look at the framework, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Think of how you can take a case study or project you worked on. Am I able to explain it like I'm 5 with a beginning and a middle and an end? That's how you should look at every portfolio piece you want in there. And do I have outcomes? If not, it's okay. Explain it. But the framework that I've presented at the beginning, really, really important. And how can you approach it in that way?
What application can I use to create a portfolio?
You can literally put it within anything. If you're using Sketch, if you're using Figma, Illustrator, Photoshop, you can put it in anything. At the end, it's just about picking your poison or the tool you like to use and design for it. Like within my portfolio, I sometimes have to use Photoshop because I need to mock up an image. That's okay. My portfolio is built in Keynote. That's how I built mine. I built it in Keynote, and then I created a PDF out of it because depending on where you are in your career, I need to have a lot of words in mind because directors need to see how I think and how I write. But I also, have a website which is super simple and has not a lot of text on it. So you need to be able to vary. And even if you're not that good in coding, you can use Squarespace, you can use, it's okay, or Simplist or whatever other software, they have pre-built portfolios. Just make it unique. Just make your portfolio, your colors, etc. Just pick your software, stick to it. You don't need to code. You don't need to be that savvy in tech. You're still able to do a portfolio nowadays. I think there's a lot of easy ways to approach it.
We have one last question in the list. What other questions do employer expect from the UX candidate during the interview?
If you're, a pure UXer, they want to see, how do you talk to end users? How are you able to talk to a project manager, hypothetically, capture the, what is it? What's the feature that they want to work for? Why is that? They want to see how you think. They want to see how you're able to articulate a problem into a potential solution and help guide us towards that thing. Questions are going to be obviously, behavioral questions. And behavioral questions, you try to approach within, the STAR model or any other ways that you can tackle these solutions. Specific questions is a bit hard. I can share a link with all of you after that are like the top questions that the majority of people ask. More than happy to send that over by email, and then you can share with the people who are on the call. Those are things that are mostly answered, and I think it's also going to depend on where you work. If you work in enterprise, they want to see how you're able to think in a long term, because working on enterprise, you're working on the same thing over the year. How can you see and find potential problems within the software, surf it up, have that conversation with developers, project managers, and work towards that 3 in the box model where you come together to solve a problem. If you're working on websites, etc., you have a user need, then you got to go and solve it. So the questions are going to be geared towards that. They're going to want to see how you can apply design thinking into your process. So, user journeys, user maps, hills, and whatnot, like the typical design thinking thing. Questions are going to be geared towards that as well. So questions are going to vary depending on where you apply. But I have winning the interview game that I kind of created an ebook for. I can send parts of it to you for the audience, which is going to help. Typical answers and typical ways you can help answer them, which is going to help answer this question at the same time.
I think that would be really helpful. So I think before we would end this particular workshop, I would just there's one question we asked from all of our speakers. What was your design journey has been like? As in, how did you start and you decided that this is something you would want to pursue for the rest of your life as a career?
Yeah, it's and I would say my design journey is what I recommend to everybody is you evolve with the craft as you move. I started off in typical agency doing, logos, branding, etc. Then websites came along. I started understanding UX. I started working on user experiences because I didn't learn that in school. I had to learn it and figure it out because it wasn't a part of a role that existed before. Right. So I've worked in agencies. I did that. Then I evolved into startups, helping startups. So wearing all the hats that a startup can do, being the only designer of the company. Then after that, leading, a team of designers within the startup worlds, understanding how the mindset of a VP of, that small team works. So I did that. Then I worked in enterprise in thinking in long-term and understanding all those things, and had to pivot again into software and apps, etc., which I didn't learn in school, but I had to learn by myself. So I think my career journey, it has been about adjusting and pivoting with the craft and where the industry is going. And I think it's something that I recommend a lot is you can start in your craft now. That may not what you're going to be doing in 10 years. The design, I'm a designer. I don't consider myself like a UX designer. I'm a designer because designer, the term, pivots and adjusts over your career.
Right. And
I think it's important to be flexible and being able to be molded and go with where the trends are and, move. And sometimes I may move laterally to better move forward. I think it's the same thing. Just be flexible and be able to adjust with the current times. That's basically, what I've done and what I recommend that the majority of people do as well.
I think that's the lesson for the day. Adjusting with the term designer and not putting labels onto it, that I'm a graphic designer, UX designer, or UI designer. We lose the essence in the labels that we put, I believe. I think that's a really, really great lesson. And thank you so much, Pascal, for doing this today. And I've shared Pascal's LinkedIn profile in the chat section. You can reach out to him later. You can learn from his design journey. And thank you so much for doing this with us today. It was a lovely session. I love hosting it with you.
It's a pleasure. If anybody has any questions afterwards, reach out. I'm more than happy to help answer any questions and provide any feedback or any elements people may need. I'm going to share as much as I can, and I'm going to share a document with you so that you can share with the people that were on the call.
Yeah, absolutely.
On interviews and how to present your portfolio at an interview. And if there's anything, again, I'm more than happy to help answer anything.
Thank you so much. This was a lovely session. And
It's
have
a
a great
pleasure.
rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Same to you.